Because I think the biggest damage that we do with these situations is we overeat, we feel bad, we don't do anything for days on end, and it turns into a week of not going to the gym, a week of overeating, and then they think, man, I really got to get my stuff together and start getting back on track, so to speak. Don't do that. Lastly, what I want to leave you with is some of my tips for a healthier holiday. So this is what I recommend to a lot of my clients. Number one might be surprising. Hello there, everyone. Allie Virtue here from the Pre-Diet Podcast and owner of Parkside Nutrition. And welcome to a visual podcast today. So if you are watching on Spotify, YouTube, thank you for being here. My goal today is to teach you about nutrition. That is the whole goal of this podcast, the Pre-Diet Podcast. It's named that because I want this to be your tool to use and to learn and to build upon so you don't need to start another diet on Monday. You're going to learn a lot about nutrition. You're going to learn a lot of strategies and practical tips to truly make your just general lifestyle that much healthier so it supports your longevity in a more sustainable way. So today we are talking about the 7 foods to avoid at Thanksgiving dinner. A lot of people will probably think that my job gets pretty tough this time of year because there's a lot of holidays, there's a lot of eating, there's a lot of food, sweets, treats, and a lot of things that people don't think that they should be eating if they want to be a healthy person, lose weight, etc. And we're going to learn a lot today. Let's just say that. Let's dig into it. First of all, thank you so much for listening to this podcast or watching it. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe so we can continue to grow this and I can cover more topics. All right. So I know you guys are probably anticipating what are 7 foods that I should be avoiding this Thanksgiving. And we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about it in context with you. Not just me, not these general just recommendations. We're going to get real as far as what's most helpful for you. But first of all, I want to put this whole day in context. It is one day. I have a calendar up here if you are watching this, and this one day, this one meal will not make or break your health at all. But I do think you should practice this stuff because these holidays, these occasions, call them social eating occasions, come up a lot. If your health goals are important to you, which hopefully they are, and hopefully you know why, we need to practice this stuff. It's not that this is a big deal, but the skill of learning how to eat in social settings and learning how to balance an environment that you are still thinking of your goals, but also you still want to have fun, you want to let loose a little bit. We need to find that gray area. A lot of people will think on a diet, off a diet, black and white, in terms like that. We need to break that cycle of thinking so we can act in a way that is truly sustainable and breathe longevity into our approach. So we need to practice eating in these scenarios and finding that middle ground of like, I still want to enjoy some stuff that I don't have on a regular basis that might not serve my health goals, in the best possible way. I love pumpkin pie, but yeah, eating it every day is probably not best for my health. We can recognize those two things and we can find the middle ground. I also want us to practice this because you don't know who in your circle, who there secretly does really want to work on their health. And so just you being a little bit more conscious, and if we can create just a healthier eating environment that just takes a lot of the stigma away from either dieting, eating healthy, or changes the expectation of, hey, we got to eat as much as we possibly can on this particular holiday. If we can make this kind of culture around food for our family a little bit healthier, we are going to make healthier generations. We're going to live longer, live better, higher quality lives. And I don't know who wouldn't want that for your family for now and for future generations. So let's keep this day in context, but also look forward to developing our skills as a person and trying to become a healthier version of ourselves. 7 foods to avoid. We're going to highlight the foods that I don't think align with most people's goals, foods that don't make you feel good. This is also how we're going to determine these things. And the amount of food might matter more than the particular food that you might think you need to avoid. So mashed potatoes might not be off your list. Pumpkin pie might not be off your list. You might not need to avoid those things, but we might need to be specific about how much we can enjoy and still feel good. So quick little reminder, this is what our plate most of the time should be looking like. Yes, my head is on a food scale. That is a plate behind me. And this is my dog in the corner up here. I'll get to why he's here. So this is our basic plate. This is just a reminder because as a person trying to be a healthy human, this is what it generally takes food-wise to create or feed a healthy human. Now, this is a little leeway when we're getting into holidays and wanting to have a little bit more fun food, but the basics still apply. I like to say we still need to pay rent. Even if we want to go shopping on Amazon, I need to pay my rent first. I need to make sure my body gets some good nutrition first. And then if I'm still not totally stuffed, and I still have some room, and I'm still feeling okay, yeah, let's have some fun food. But let's talk about this plate. So basic plate, quarter of it is going to be protein, 4 to 8 ounces. If you want to measure, 115 to 170 grams is the equivalent to that. So about quarter of our plate is a good amount of protein. These are things like animal proteins, particularly. You can use plant proteins. You usually just need a little bit more. We can't quite get as much of the protein out of those plant protein sources. The other half of the plate, hopefully, is colorful non-starchy vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables mean colorful things that don't have a ton of carbohydrates, but they have a lot of nutrition. So they have a lot of color, vitamins, minerals, the little stuff that our body needs to make it function really well. These things are super important. They don't usually spike our blood sugar that much, which is another awesome thing about them. The starchy carbohydrates, so the starchy means that there is a lot more. The carbohydrates are concentrated in these types of carbohydrates, so I don't need as much volume or big a portion to get more carbohydrates from these particular foods. So I have to watch them sometimes. So this part of the plate depends a lot on someone's health status. If they have type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, PCOS, high blood sugars, anything in that realm, they usually need to moderate this part of the plate, but very individual to the person. If you are a very active person, if you're an athlete, if you are a young adult who's an athlete and very active, lifting weights, running, doing all the things, we usually need a lot more of these types of foods. And then we have our healthy fats. So fats are kind of hard to put a specific amount on, similar to starchy carbohydrates, because if someone has a high calorie need, we're usually going to need to incorporate more fats simply because they are a dense source of energy. If someone is very sedentary and doesn't have a high calorie need, then we usually need to moderate these. And we usually don't have to find them or like search for them or make sure we add them in, because they come with a lot of things that are in like salad dressings, cooking oils, or sometimes they're a part of our proteins in quite significant amounts. So usually we don't have to work too hard, but there are some good ones and they're definitely a part of a healthy balanced plate. So why the heck is my dog up here? So I would do anything for my dog, just FYI. His name is Jasper. I love him to pieces and I would do anything for him. So whether he's a good boy, bad boy, whatever, he gets the same amount of food that is good for him, that keeps him at a healthy weight, that feeds, his energy levels, all those beautiful things. So I feed him the same. I use the same cup, right? This scale is my cup. So why would I not do the same for myself? I need to feed myself in a portion that makes me feel good. And from a long time, many, many years of tracking my food, I have found really good combinations and portions for myself that make me feel really good, keep me focused, give me good energy levels. They maintain my health. They maintain my weight. They maintain my activity, all those beautiful things. So from that, I know how much of most food groups or my meal overall should weigh. So I use this to measure my food. And even though I'm not tracking in Chronometer anymore or a tracking app anymore, I can keep my nutrition pretty darn consistent. So this can be helpful for really dialing in those portions for you. Not necessarily suggesting this for Thanksgiving, but if you're not doing this on a regular basis, you're probably missing a lot of really good information. Potentially. If you had any disordered eating in the past, this might not be very applicable for you right now. All right, so let's dig into potentially what could be on your Thanksgiving menu. I tried to gather most like common menus, so I know I'm going to miss a lot of traditional foods probably that I just couldn't think of, but let's start with appetizers. So some common ones would be mixed nuts, cheese and crackers, a charcuterie board, spinach artichoke dip, other chips and crackers and things, veggies and dip, hummus, things like that. So I think this is pretty normal. I know I'm missing some, but of this, number one, I love the ones that have color, so the vegetable options, but I wanted to show you some estimated macros of these things so we can kind of quantify it. And again, this is not to make this all about calorie counting, but just so you're more informed on what we're, quote, kind of spending as far as our calories or our budget for food and how you want to do that. So like I said, when I said I pay my bills first, if I have a set income every month, I need to pay my bills first. So I need to make sure that I'm giving my body really good nutrient-dense calories, not just calories. My body needs nutrition. It needs the vitamins and minerals. So within that allotment, I need to make sure that my body gets the little things, the vitamins and minerals that my body needs. So this is just educational purposes of like, hey, these foods are made out of these things. If they're not your favorite and they're kind of high calorie and they don't give you a lot of nutrition, maybe we don't have those. Maybe they don't get as much plate space as the foods you either really like or the foods that are really going to nourish our body and make you feel good. So just educational purposes. I usually don't spend too much time talking about calories, but it is relevant for this comparison. All right, so these are very estimated macros for these types of things. Definitely recommend the Chronometer app if you want to get more dialed in with how much you're eating and portions and macros and all of that. Macros, by the way, are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. That's how we break our food down in the big groups. So let's see, mixed nuts here. So take like a half a cup serving, which is probably like a good handful. I would say most of the time for my clients, about a quarter cup or an ounce is a better serving. So this is why, because 400 calories for half a cup is kind of a lot, right? If we're taking the average person is 2,000 calories a day, that could be a big chunk. And that's really just a snack. It's not really even it's not a meal, right? It's just a handful of nuts. So for me, this is not a great choice as far as if I'm picking appetizers. I'm more of a meal gal. I don't really want to snack too much because I want the meal. Usually the meal is usually more exciting than these foods. So I try to keep that in mind. But if we compare these other ones here, let's see, this is high calorie, so it's going to have a lot of fat, 35 grams of fat. It has a little bit of fiber in its favor, but not a ton for the amount of calories that it gives you. Cheese and crackers, it's going to give you just a lot of calories, not a ton. Greatly depends on the types of crackers, so it's hard to kind of get numbers on this. Cheese is going to have a little bit of protein, but most of the time it's going to come with a decent amount of calories too, so it's not like a lean, terribly efficient source of getting our protein. Similar for spinach artichoke dip. Artichoke on its own has a lot of really good beneficial fibers in it, but in a dip form like this, it's usually pretty high calorie. Vegetable tray with hummus, usually a really good option, not going to be terribly high in calories. Hummus can be. So I personally would love a serving that's bigger than 2 tablespoons of hummus with most veggies that I'm having. So that's where this can be kind of high calorie depending on how much of the dip, because the hummus is fairly dense as far as calories. Great whole food, healthy option. But again, if these foods aren't something that you're like, I love this, and there's food on the menu that you really like, I would probably skip this, try to minimize it, and really save my stomach space, really more than calories, save my stomach space for the foods that I really enjoy. If you are someone that likes to partake in the appetizers though, one of the best tips I have for you is just making sure that you always serve yourself on a plate. So again, we kind of get a good visual of like, this is how much I'm eating of the appetizers. If you want to track it later, if you are tracking, you can snap a picture of it. But also we can kind of count in our head of like, hey, I've had 3 plates of appetizers. Maybe I should slow down a little bit. That's easier to grasp and kind of tell ourselves versus like just kind of grazing. It's kind of hard to quantify that. And then that's how we can kind of end up overeating. All right, proteins. So proteins, these are pretty good options. They're pretty whole foods mostly. I mean, there's not like that's a turkey, that's a ham. Yes, that ham is glazed. Salmon is an option for some people, I guess. Prime rib, which that sounds delicious. And I know there's probably some soy or tofu options as well. But these are pretty basic. I usually don't get too worried about these as far as like how they're made, how they're cooked, things like that. I take that back. Unless you're using a fried turkey, that's obviously going to be really high fat. All right, so now that if we can compare number-wise these proteins, they're pretty good. I'm not really, if you have a particular preference for one or the other, I'm not really too worried about it. The big difference you'll see here as far as numbers is the glazed ham is going to be higher in carbohydrates, but it's not that much. 4 to 8 grams of sugar or carbs added is really not a lot. For a reference, an apple is like 25-ish grams of carbs. So not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. So choose whatever protein that you really enjoy. I will add one caveat to this is sausages generally are really high in fat. So if there's some sort of sausage or maybe it's on the charcuterie board, usually those types of proteins have a lot of fat with them. So if you're thinking like, I'm getting my protein in with these types of sources, you're probably adding a lot of calories for the amount of protein it's giving you. As an example, let's take this turkey here. So it gives you 26 grams of protein for a 100 gram serving. The estimated fat that comes along with that, 2 to 3 grams, is very, very low. That's very, very lean versus a sausage is probably going to have close to equal, if not, double the amount of grams of fat for 1 gram of protein that it's going to give you. That's going to give you a lot of calories and not a ton of protein. So you kind of end up chasing your tail if you're thinking, I'm getting my protein up for a weight loss goal. That's a rough way to do it. So stick to these proteins that I've got listed here and you'll probably be pretty good. All right, let's dig into the sides. The sides are my favorite. I won't lie, this was really hard to think of non-starchy ones because usually they're really starchy, but there's some, right? When I think of Thanksgiving, I think of squashes, those kind of fall, autumn type plants. The first things on my list are the green bean casserole. I know there's a ton of different recipes for this. Usually there's a really thick like cream of mushroom sauce. You can keep that separate because that's going to be probably the main amount of calories that's added to this dish. If you can kind of serve that as like it's a gravy, that would be a great way to do it. So we're not just drenching the whole thing in that higher calorie sauce. That would be a great way to go. Our family always includes a salad. I know this is probably not really a very exciting part of the menu, but it's nice to have there. Again, just trying to feed everybody and fill all the needs. It's really helpful if you have a salad. You can also put a kind of spin on it by adding like butternut squash, cranberries, these are pomegranates, pecans, some feta, that type of like grain fall salad is so delicious. So highly recommend having something like that on your menu. So if you do have someone that's coming that needs a lower calorie or lower carb option that's kind of a filler, this would be a great dish to have. Roasted Brussels sprouts. I love these. I know they're not everybody's favorite. I like them roasted. If you steam them, hats off to you. I don't really love that they're steamed. I don't think they taste very good. When you roast them, you can have olive oil, pepper, salt, and other spices, and so you can really make them taste good. So highly recommend doing that. You could also do some other types of roasted squash. This is an acorn squash here in the middle. You could do a butternut squash soup on the side. That's really nice to have. And then mashed cauliflower. So if you need a lower carb option than mashed potatoes, mashed cauliflower is a great way to go. If you don't want to go full mashed cauliflower, you can also do half potatoes, half cauliflower. So it cuts the carbs a little bit, but still tastes great and you still get that great flavor from the potato. All right, starchy carbohydrate sides. So these are your classics: the mashed potato and gravy, sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows on top or brown sugar. I'm sorry, I don't get this. This was never a traditional dish when growing up. So this one I just find really strange. But anyway, we'll carry on. Stuffing, lots of different ways to make stuffing. We make kind of a paleo version. It doesn't have any bread in it, but it's still so delicious. So if you want that recipe, reach out to me. I will send it to you. It's by Paleo OMG, paleoomg.com, paleo stuffing. Oh, delicious. Dinner rolls. I don't find them that delicious or that special, so they're not on my list personally. Cranberry sauce and mac and cheese. Again, mac and cheese I feel like is an every day of the week type of meal, not a Thanksgiving thing, but feel free to leave your opinions in the comments. All right, so these are starchy sides. Let's compare them. All right, so now that we have the numbers estimated, very estimated, so don't come at me if these don't look the same as your app. Very estimated. All right, so the first things that come to mind when I'm comparing these sides, these are starchy ones, these are non-starchy ones. First things that come to mind when I'm planning my plate in general are what are the foods that I really want to enjoy. So if there's something nostalgic, something really delicious that you don't get to eat all the time, let's identify that. For me, that's going to be pumpkin pie and stuffing. Like, those are my favorites. Those are higher carb things. I am watching my blood sugar. I don't want to cause a spike. I don't want to feel bad. I want to try to enjoy those foods in an amount that still makes me feel good. So with that in mind, knowing that I have pumpkin pie after this meal and stuffing is my favorite, I'm probably going to prioritize stuffing. That is one of the higher carb options on here. And so I'm going to have some space for this, a moderate portion most likely, and then I'm still going to include some green bean casserole and some roasted Brussels sprouts to fill out my nutritional needs. So those are going to give me a lot of nutrition. They're not going to give me a lot of carbohydrates, so they're going to be really good for my blood sugar. They have a little bit of fiber, not a ton, but otherwise that's how I'm going to balance my plate. If you like one of these other sources, if you really like the mac and cheese or the mashed potatoes and the sweet potato casserole, that's fine, but try to balance that out. So if we love each of these like really high starchy things, let's have them in a smaller portion. Again, so we don't eat so much or overeat to the point where we feel really full. The goal for me and for most of my clients is to still enjoy the food that we want to and still feel good afterwards. And if I overeat, I'm not going to feel too good afterwards. So this graph is not to necessarily shame any of these foods. It's really just to put in context and educate you that these are higher carb options. The dinner rolls are going to be higher carbs. Typically, the cranberry sauce is going to be higher carbs. I don't know why I didn't highlight that one. But so just be aware and moderate the portion. Cranberry sauce, quarter cup or less is probably a good portion for that. Gravy doesn't have a ton, although it depends on how you make it. I know it could be probably really high calorie, but just take that into consideration and choose what you want to enjoy most in a proper portion. Desserts, the favorite part of the meal. So pumpkin pie, pecan pie, apple pie, probably with vanilla ice cream, sweet potato pie, brownies, cookies. Who knows? I chose most of the classics, but I know there's probably others that I'm absolutely forgetting about. But for me, I'm not going to tell you not to have dessert, but I will ask you, what do you want out of this? What are your favorite foods? What do you want to enjoy? How do we reverse engineer that? So like I've already said, pumpkin pie is my absolute favorite. That is like, my eyes are on that pumpkin pie. My eyes are on that prize because I want to enjoy that in a way that makes me still feel really good. So I'm going to moderate my carbs earlier. I'm going to have protein with my meal, which is also going to balance my blood sugar. I'm going to have vegetables. I'm going to have some of that salad. So that those things specifically are going to help me balance my blood sugar. So when I eat that pumpkin pie, my blood sugar, my body is not going to have to work overtime to balance my blood sugar. Plus, when your blood sugar is really high and then it crashes, it doesn't feel good. And I really don't want to feel overly full either after the meal. So that's how I'm going to engineer things so I can still have pie and feel good. Those are my goals. You can determine yours, but let's compare these numbers. All right, nobody probably wants to know the numbers of the desserts, but I'm here for educational purposes, so we're going to talk about them a little bit. And I honestly don't, because we know I don't usually focus on it too much, because we're not choosing this because it's a good calorie option. We're choosing it because we really enjoy this type of food, right? This option is really high calorie because we're adding a pie with a lot of sugar with ice cream on top. So we're just like really hitting it high there. So this one is going to be like 60 to 65 grams of carbohydrates. This one's 50 to 55. So, they're pretty similar. I do like the pumpkin pie also because I feel like it's a little bit lighter of an option. I don't feel as heavy or overly stuffed when I have pumpkin pie. So that's one of the reasons I like it. So I don't think this is really, I don't think the macros of these particular desserts really matter too much, because we're usually choosing to enjoy them because we want to enjoy them purely because they're delicious. So I don't think this is terribly helpful information, but again, now you know, and now you can be informed on how these things compare. If you haven't tracked macros before and you're like, I don't know how much this matters as far as carbohydrates, a coffee drink from Starbucks that's like a mocha frappuccino fancy thing is probably going to be close to 60 grams of carbs for reference. Like I said, an apple is probably like 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates. So have that in mind. Also, whole foods are usually going to have a lot more fiber than this. Your fancy coffee drink from Starbucks is going to have no fiber whatsoever. It's just going to be pure sugar, not much protein, maybe some fat in there, but it's going to be a pretty straight shot of sugar. Just keep that in mind when we are comparing these things, that whole foods are going to come with a lot of other things besides just a lot of carbs and calories. Onward. So these are my 7 foods to avoid or minimize. I don't know what yours are, but I will help you determine that. So let me share my list. Number 1, alcohol. For me, I don't like alcohol. So even if it wasn't a carcinogen, I wouldn't include it because I don't like it. So that's a part of this process as well. I just don't like this as much. Alcohol is also just not helpful for most health goals. So that's why it's number 1 thing to leave off. If someone were to ask me, hey, what's one of the healthier options or healthier choices I can make at Thanksgiving? I would say avoiding alcohol would probably be top of my list. Number 2 is the mac and cheese. Like I said, it's not a Thanksgiving food in my opinion. Don't hate me. It's really high calorie, really high carb. There's other favorite things that I would rather eat, so it's off my list. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows, again, weird to me, really high carb, it's off my list. Appetizers, not that good compared to the other foods, so that's off my list for the most part. Pumpkin pie, really high sugar, really high fat, not very much fiber, so it's off my list for my health goals. Dinner rolls, I feel like that's an everyday food. I don't feel like they're that special, so they're off my list. Anything fried is also off my list. Most people that I talk to that are paying attention to their digestion, when they eat a lot of fried food, they don't typically feel very good. It's very hard on your digestion, especially if you have gut issues. This is definitely something I would keep off of your menu because it is going to be hard to, even in small amounts, eat fried food and still feel your best. So you're making your own list. This is my list, but let me help you create your own list. 3 steps to a healthier Thanksgiving dinner. So if you haven't caught on by now, I'm big into questions. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I can, but I really want you to figure this out for yourself because your goals look different than mine and they look different from your next door neighbors. So let's figure out what you want out of this scenario. 3 steps to a healthier dinner. First question I'm going to ask is, what is the most important and valuable part of this occasion? Is it family time? Is it the pumpkin pie, like myself? Is it just feeling good? What do you want out of it? Maybe you want this as totally like a free day, don't want to think about nutrition. That's fine. But I would encourage you again to try to make this a slightly healthier version, because I think the biggest damage that we do with these situations is we overeat, we feel bad, we don't do anything for days on end, and it turns into a week of not going to the gym, a week of overeating, and then they think, man, I really got to get my stuff together and start, getting back on track, so to speak. Don't do that. Really, if you practice on doing this in a slightly healthier, more so mentally healthier way, then we don't have that big rebound effect And then it is truly isolated to like one meal and not like a full-on week of just overeating and no activity. So what is the most important thing for you? What's most valuable? How can we reverse engineer this? So if you're thinking, Friday morning, you wake up and you're like, dang, I nailed that. That was perfect. I wouldn't change anything. What does that look like? For most people, they typically say, I don't want to overeat. I want to enjoy some of the fun food that I haven't had in a while, quote, off diet foods, learn how to incorporate that stuff, and I want to spend some quality time with my family. That's generally the answers I hear, and then we try to figure out, okay, what does that include? How do we make that happen? Question 2, what is one habit that you want to let go of? Something that doesn't serve you anymore, doesn't make you feel good. Most of the time it's overeating to the point of discomfort. Maybe it's setting some boundaries with family so they don't stress you out, so you don't lean on food for comfort when stressful situations come up. Third, what are 3 habits to include the day of Thanksgiving, insert other holiday there, to create a healthier, balanced, and sustainable approach to this holiday? I would say walk with the family. Again, I'm always trying to create a better culture around this stuff for the whole family. That's how I feel like I can impact the most people. And that's if we just go on a family walk. Include everybody. It's not mandatory, obviously, but it does promote a little activity. Also, if I know I'm going for a walk afterwards, I'm less likely to overeat as much as well. Number 2, serve yourself on a plate. Like I said with the appetizers, get a good visual of what you're eating so you can actually visualize how much you've been eating and not just graze all day. It's really hard to gauge if we do that. Third, exercise like a normal human, like you normally would. Don't treat this as a day where I have to have this killer workout in the morning. Move like you normally would. We should be aiming to exercise every day anyway, not just because we might eat a little bit more today. Exercise like normal. Lastly, what I want to leave you with is some of my tips for a healthier holiday. So this is what I recommend to a lot of my clients. Number 1 might be surprising. Number 1 is sleep well the night before. If you are well rested, you likely eat less. Your hormones are better balanced. Your appetite is better balanced. Your stress levels are usually lower. So if we get a good night's sleep, we're starting this day off really, really well. Exercise like a normal human that week. Just make sure you get to the gym. Doesn't need to be a week of killer workouts. Just exercise like it's a normal week. Eat breakfast. Some people are going to be like, Allie, I'm about to eat so much, I'm not going to eat breakfast. That's up to you, but I would really like you to have breakfast so you don't go into those high food scenarios starving. If you go in starving, it's going to be really hard to be very intentional and moderate about your choices. Number 4 has been my lifesaver lately. I have been using a continuous glucose monitor to monitor my blood sugars because they were starting to get a little too high for my liking, and drinking a fiber supplement about 30 minutes before a big meal that has carbohydrates that I know would typically increase my blood sugar has been a game changer. It really, really helps blunt that glucose spike and keeps my blood sugar nice and even and does wonders for your digestion as well. Honestly, you're going to have great poops the next day. Make sure you drink a lot of water. But I've really, really enjoyed adding this thing in. It's really helping me out, and I recommend it to most of my clients. Walk after the meal. It doesn't have to be a crazy workout, an extreme walk, or a hike, but just move. Having a bunch of food, having high carb food, and then sitting is just not a great combination. Number 6, include protein at the meal. This should be pretty easy. Hopefully this is a given. That's turkey, prime rib, one of the ones we already talked about. Hopefully that's easy. Number 7 is really to help out your blood sugar. Eat your veggies first. The salads, the non-starchy veggies, the things that have a lot of fiber. Again, that's going to help blunt that glucose response so you don't get big sugar spikes. Bonus, if you serve yourself on a plate and don't graze. Was this helpful? Hopefully it was. These are some of my best tips that I pass on to my clients. I hope they help you out. I hope they give you a Thanksgiving dinner that makes you feel good. You get to enjoy time with your family, enjoy some fun foods in a way that truly leaves you feeling like you crushed it. So if this was helpful, please like this video, like this podcast, subscribe on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify, and please, please, please share this on your social media or with a friend. It really helps me grow the show. If you have any topics that you want to submit, you can email me, Allie, A-L-I, at parksidenutrition.com. I would love to cover any questions that you have, but thank you so much for being here and have a great rest of your day.